Evan Hale walked across the quiet forest path of the frontier moon, carrying a small metal basket filled with glowing herbs. The evening sky above him shone with soft blue light from the planet's distant suns. It was supposed to be an ordinary day. He was a human field healer stationed on this moon for simple medical research, not adventure. Yet as he walked, he felt that something around him had changed. The forest was calm but not peaceful. The leaves stood still. The wind had stopped. Even the soft insects that usually sang at night were silent. Evan paused and looked around. He checked his small wrist scanner, which showed no warning signals. Strange, he murmured to himself. He had been on this moon for months and learned that silence usually meant something had disturbed the area. But what? There were no dangerous animals here, at least none he had ever seen. The moon was known for being a gentle place. It's perfect for study and healing work. As he continued walking, he saw something unusual on the ground. A footprint. Not human. Not shaped like any creature he knew. It was delicate, narrow, and almost glowing faintly in the dim light. He crouched down and touched the edges. The soil was still soft, meaning the footprint was fresh, only a few minutes old. Evan stood slowly and followed the trail. Each step led deeper into the forest, where the trees grew taller and the shadows thicker. The footprints became uneven, as if the one leaving them was stumbling or in pain. Someone's hurt, Evan whispered to himself. His healer's instincts rose instantly. No matter who or what it was, he could not ignore a wounded being. After a few minutes, he reached a fallen tree lying across a small stream. Something bright caught his eye on the other side. He stepped closer, his breath stopping for a moment. There, half hidden by the large tree trunk, lay a young alien girl with shimmering skin and faintly glowing markings across her cheeks and arms. She looked fragile, maybe around the equivalent age of a human teenager or young adult. Her eyes were closed, her breathing weak and uneven. Evan approached slowly, careful not to startle her if she was awake. He knelt beside her and checked her pulse gently. It was faint. Her skin was cool, not cold like illness, but like someone who had been exposed to harsh weather or exhaustion. He saw a small cut on her leg and a few bruises. Nothing was life-threatening, but her condition would worsen if she stayed in the forest. She opened her eyes just a little. Her pupils were bright silver, reflecting the moonlight. She tried to speak, but only soft sounds came out. Words he could not understand. "It's okay," Evan said gently. "You're safe. I won't harm you. I'm here to help." She blinked slowly, her gaze full of fear and confusion. Evan kept his voice calm and warm. "I'm a healer. I can treat your wounds, but I need to bring you somewhere safe." Her hand lifted weakly, touching his wrist as if to check his intention. Evan stayed still, letting her decide whether to trust him. After a long moment, she lowered her hand and closed her eyes again. It was small permission, but it was enough. Evan took a deep breath. He knew the rules. All alien contact had to be reported immediately to the main station. But looking at her, lying helpless and alone, he felt he could not leave her here while he waited for approval. He was human, and humans helped those in need. That was enough for him. He carefully lifted her into his arms. She was lighter than he expected, almost weightless. Her bones were finer than a human's. As he walked back through the forest, kept his steps gentle so she wouldn't feel discomfort. Her faint glow made a soft light around them, guiding him along the path even as the night grew darker, reaching his small cabin. He pushed the door open with his shoulder and walked inside. It was neat, in simple medical supplies on shelves. Small bed, a table with herb samples, and a heating unit in the corner. He placed her gently on the bed and covered her with a thermal blanket. She looked peaceful but still weak. Evan moved quickly. He washed his hands, prepared basic healing tools, and mixed the forest herbs with human medicine to create a safe paste for skin recovery. He worked carefully, treating the bruise on her leg first. The glowing markings on her skin brightened slightly as the medicine touched her. He had never seen that before, but it seemed like a natural reaction, not harmful. When he finished cleaning her wounds, he prepared a warm liquid made from purified water and mild nutrients. He held her head slightly and touched the cup to her lips. "Drink a little," he said softly. She opened her eyes slowly and took a small sip. Her breathing steadied. "Good," he whispered. "You're doing well." She looked at him longer now, more aware, studying his face with quiet curiosity. She touched his hand gently, as if trying to ask who he was. "My name is Evan," he said, pointing to himself. "Ivan." She blinked, and then tried to repeat his name, though her voice was soft and her accent unfamiliar. "Ivan," Evan smiled. "Yes, close enough." She then pressed her hand to her chest and spoke a short word that sounded like Leora. Evan repeated it carefully. Leora. Eyes softened. Showing that he had said it correctly, there was no full language between them yet, but even a small exchange felt meaningful. It was trust beginning to grow. Leora tried to sit up, but her body trembled. Evan placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "No, rest. You're safe here." She looked around the cabin, her expression still cautious but no longer frightened. She seemed to understand that he was not part of whatever trouble she had faced before collapsing in the forest. Evan sat at the nearby table, paring more herbs while keeping an eye on her. He wondered how she had gotten here. The moon had very few visitors, and her species was rare. He had only heard rumors about beings with glowing markings, peaceful and gentle, not warriors or explorers. So what was she doing on this quiet moon? How did she get separated from her group? As these thoughts filled his mind, Leora shifted slightly on the bed. Evan looked over and saw her watching him with soft, tired eyes. She lifted a hand weakly, pointing toward the window. Evan stood up and walked to it. Outside, the forest was still silent, as if holding its breath. Whatever event had led her here was not simple. Evan returned to her side. "Don't worry," he said in a calm voice. "I'll help you. You're not alone anymore." She closed her eyes gently, her expression peaceful for the first time since he found her. He adjusted the blanket around her and dimmed the lights to help her rest, as the night deepened. Evan sat beside the bed, keeping watch. He did not know what tomorrow would bring. He only knew one thing. He had saved someone who needed him. And in that simple act, something had quietly changed his life, her fate, and perhaps the future between humans and her kind. And while she slept, her glowing markings slowly brightened, filling the room with calm light, as if thanking him in a language he could not yet understand. Leora woke slowly as the soft morning light entered the small cabin. The gentle glow from her markings dimmed as her eyes opened, adjusting to the quiet room. For a moment, she seemed unsure of where she was. Her fingers gripped the edge of the blanket, and her breathing quickened with confusion. Then she saw Evan sitting at the nearby table, writing notes in his small datapad. His calm presence made her relax again. Evan looked up the moment he sensed movement. "Good morning," he said with a warm smile. "How are you feeling?" Leora blinked, trying to understand the words. She placed a hand over her chest and breathed deeply, as if showing she felt better. Evan nodded. "Good. You're healing well." He stood and walked over to the bed. Leora watched him closely, her silver eyes studying each of his movements as if trying to learn his nature. Evan picked up a small cup of warm, nutrient drink from the table and held it toward her. She hesitated, then gently took the cup with both hands. Her fingers were long and delicate, almost shining when the light touched them. She sipped slowly. The warmth seemed to ease her body, and she let out a soft breath of relief. Evan took a seat on a small stool beside the bed. "You were very weak when I found you," he said, speaking slowly, in case she only understood simple words. "Rest more. Your body needs time." Leora nodded slightly. She touched the bandage on her leg, then looked at him with a question in her eyes. Evan understood. "Yes, I treated your wound. It wasn't deep, but you were exhausted. You must have been walking for a long time." Leora looked toward the window with a sad expression. Evan wondered what she had seen or lost before he found her. He wished he could understand her language better. She seemed to want to explain, but every time she tried to speak, only short, soft syllables came out. They were beautiful but unfamiliar. Evan stood and gestured toward a small tray of herbs. "I'm going to make more medicine," he said. "You can rest. You're safe." The word safe made Leora's expression soften. She looked around the cabin again, noticing the simple comfort of the space, the neat shelves, the warm lights, the small heater, and the quiet air around them. She had probably never been inside a human home before, yet she seemed to feel no danger here, while Evan crushed herbs and mixed them with a liquid solution. Leora slowly sat up straighter on the bed. Her movements were still weak, but she was improving. She touched the blanket, the wooden bed frame, then the metal cup, examining everything with calm curiosity. Evan smiled at the sight. "You're learning," he said softly. "Humans use these things every day." She pointed at his datapad next, tilting her head. Evan picked it up and showed her the screen. It displayed simple sketches he had made, drawings of trees, footprints, the herb plants, and a few healing instructions. Leora touched the image of the footprint, recognizing it as her own. She looked embarrassed for a moment, as if apologizing silently for causing trouble. Evan shook his head kindly. "No, it's okay. I'm glad I found you." Her glowing markings brightened slightly, a quiet sign of gratitude. The morning passed peacefully. Evan cleaned the cabin, prepared food, and checked his equipment. Leora watched him, sometimes trying to mimic his words or gestures. When he cooked a small pot of vegetable broth, she leaned forward, smelling it curiously. Evan handed her a bowl. She took a spoonful, tasted it, then smiled faintly, her first true smile since arriving. Seeing that smile made something warm rise in Evan's chest. She was no longer just a rescued stranger. She was becoming a real presence in his life. After some time, Evan gently placed fresh bandages on her leg. He noticed her skin was healing much faster than a human's would. The glowing lines on her arms pulsed softly, spreading warmth through her body. It was clear her species had natural abilities humans did not fully understand. While he worked, Leora watched him with trust in her eyes. She lifted a hand and touched his wrist again, the same way she had in the forest. It was her way of saying thank you. Evan smiled. "You're welcome, Leora." Later, Evan decided to step outside for a moment to gather more herbs. He brought Leora a small blanket and placed it around her shoulders before he left. "I'll be right outside. Don't worry." She nodded gently, though her eyes showed a hint of concern as he walked toward the door. She didn't want to be alone, but she didn't stop him. She trusted he would return. Outside, the forest was still strangely quiet. Evan frowned and checked his scanner again. The device picked up faint energy signals, irregular, unfamiliar. At first he thought they might be from Leora's species, but the readings were harsh and mechanical. Definitely not natural. He walked a little deeper into the trees. The ground had new marks, small circles pressed into the soil left by floating drones. Evan's heart tightened. Drones usually meant someone was searching the area, and not always for good reasons. He followed the trail for a few meters, but the signals grew stronger, so he stopped. He couldn't risk going too far from the cabin. Leora needed him. If there was danger, he had to keep her hidden. He hurried back to the cabin. When he opened the door, he saw Leora sitting up, waiting for him. The moment she saw him, her shoulders relaxed. She had been worried. Evan walked in with a calm smile, even though his mind was uneasy. "I'm back," he said gently. "Everything is fine." She studied his face closely, sensing something wasn't completely right. Her species seemed sensitive to emotion, able to read feelings even when words failed. Evan sat on the stool again. He didn't want to scare her, so he spoke softly. "Leora, someone else might be on this moon. I'm not sure who. But don't worry. I'll keep you safe." She looked concerned, then touched her chest and made a soft tone that sounded like a warning. Evan leaned in. "Danger?" he asked. She nodded slowly, her expression serious. Evan realized she might know something about the threat. Maybe the same people or machines that caused her separation from her group were the ones scanning the forest now. Maybe she had been running from them. He placed a gentle hand over hers. "You're safe here. No one will hurt you. I promise." Her eyes softened again, trusting his words. Later in the afternoon, the two of them attempted to communicate more clearly. Evan pointed at Object's stable cup. light speaking the English words. Leora repeated them softly, learning quickly. Then she pointed at objects and said the words in her language. Her voice carried a musical tone, almost like soft humming. Evan tried to repeat her words, and each time he tried, Leora smiled with encouragement. They laughed quietly when he mispronounced something. The peaceful moment felt almost natural, as if they had known each other far longer than a single day. Evening arrived, and as the sky turned purple, Evan cooked a simple dinner. Leora helped by handing him ingredients, showing she wanted to be useful even in her weak state. Her glowing markings slowly brightened again as the room darkened, giving the cabin a warm, gentle light. After eating, Evan checked her leg once more. The healing was remarkable. You're strong, he praised softly. Leora placed her hand on his, this time not out of fear or uncertainty, but as a warm, grateful gesture. She looked at him with quiet confidence, as if silently telling him she trusted him completely now. But outside the cabin, the forest stayed strangely still. Evan could not shake the feeling that something was coming. Someone was searching. Someone who should not find her. He looked at Leora one more time. She had curled under the blanket, watching him with calm, tired eyes. He smiled reassuringly, even though the worry in his heart remained. He whispered to himself, "Tomorrow, I'll find a way to protect her better." Leora drifted into sleep, her soft glow filling the room. Evan sat beside the window, keeping watch through the night, staying alert for any sound in the forest. He didn't know what danger was approaching, but he knew one thing for certain. He would not let it take her again. Evan hardly slept that night. He stayed near the window with the cabin lights dimmed, watching the forest with quiet focus. The moonlight revealed only shadows between the tall trees, but his scanner kept giving faint reading signals that shouldn't be there. Leora slept peacefully behind him, her glow a gentle reminder that she trusted him to keep her safe. That made him more alert, not less. He felt responsible for her. By early morning, the strange signals had grown stronger. Evan stepped outside for a moment, holding the scanner close to his chest. The cold air brushed against his skin as he looked at the readings. The energy pattern was not natural. It looked like the signature of unregistered drones machines used by groups that usually didn't follow the law. He walked a little toward the tree line, scanning the soil. The circular depressions from last time were deeper now. The direction of the trail suggested the drones were moving in a careful search pattern. They were scanning the forest, searching for something, searching for someone. Evan returned to the cabin quickly. When he opened the door, Leora was awake, sitting up with the blanket draped around her shoulders. The glow from her markings was dimmer than usual. Showing she sensed something was wrong, she looked directly at him, silver eyes full of concern. Evan set the scanner down and sat beside her. "Leora, listen," he began gently. "I think someone is looking for you." Her breath caught softly. She reached for his wrist again, her touch trembling. Evan covered her hand with his own. "It's okay. I won't let them take you. But we need to be careful now." Leora tried to speak, managing only a quiet word that sounded heavy with meaning. When she saw he didn't understand, she gestured with her hands, one hand moving upward, spreading out, while the other hand pressed against her chest. Evan couldn't decode the exact message, but he sensed she was trying to tell him that the people searching were not her own. They were dangerous to her. Evan nodded slowly. "Then we need to move before they get closer." Leora's eyes widened slightly. She wasn't fully healed yet, and traveling would be difficult. Evan saw her worry. He placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "We won't go far. Just to a safer place. There's an old communication tower in the canyon. If we reach it, you might be able to send a signal to your people." She blinked at the word signal, understanding it. She touched her temple with 2 fingers, then pointed upward, clearly referring to communication. Evan smiled lightly. "Yes, we need to reach your people." Leora nodded, strength slowly returning to her expression. She trusted him completely. Even though the road ahead would not be easy, Evan gathered supplies from the shelves herbs, bandages, water packs, blankets, and a few nutrient bars. He placed everything inside a small backpack. When he turned, Leora was already trying to stand. Her legs trembled a little, but she pushed herself upright. Evan quickly moved to her side and supported her gently. "You don't have to walk much," he said. "I'll help you." She shook her head softly, wanting to show she wasn't helpless. She even tried a small smile to reassure him. Evan felt a warm pride rise in his chest. She was strong, much stronger than her fragile appearance suggested. Still, he offered his arm, and she accepted it with quiet gratitude. Once outside, Leora paused, closing her eyes for a moment. Her glowing markings brightened slightly, as if she was sensing the environment. Evan waited patiently. After a few seconds, she opened her eyes again and pointed toward the distant canyon. She seemed confident of the direction. Evan smiled. "Good. We'll go together." They walked carefully through the forest. The early sunlight filtered through the leaves, casting golden patterns on the ground. Evan stayed alert, checking his scanner every few minutes. Each time, the signals of the search drones grew stronger behind them, but did not yet reach their location. As they walked, Leora sometimes stopped to touch a tree or a plant, her expression soft. It was as if she was greeting the forest, thanking it for guiding them. Evan watched her with quiet fascination. Her connection to nature seemed deeper than anything he had seen before. After an hour of slow walking, the forest began to thin, revealing rocky terrain ahead. Leora leaned against him more as the ground became uneven. Evan supported her carefully, speaking in a calm tone to keep her relaxed. "We're doing well," he said. "Just a little farther." She gave a small nod, determined to keep going. The canyon soon appeared, wide, deep, and filled with tall stone walls that echoed the sound of the wind. The old communication tower stood at its center, metal beams rusty but still standing strong. Evan had repaired the transmitter once before during his research work, and he knew it could still function with some work. Before they entered the canyon, Evan stopped suddenly. His scanner flashed with red signals, this time meaning the drones were much closer. Maybe less than half a kilometer. Evan turned to Leora. "We have to hurry." Leora's eyes filled with calm determination. She placed her hand on the ground and closed her eyes again. This time, her glowing markings brightened more than before, spreading like soft currents of light along her arms. Evan watched silently. After a moment, Leora opened her eyes and gestured forward with urgency. She had sensed something, perhaps a safe path, or perhaps the direction the drones would not immediately detect. They moved quickly, staying low behind the canyon rocks. Evan helped her climb over smaller boulders and guided her through narrow passages. The wind grew stronger inside the canyon, but it carried a strange comfort, as if nature itself wanted to hide them. When they reached the communication tower, Evan rushed to the main panel. Dust covered the metal control box, but the wires inside were still functional. He opened it and began connecting wires, adjusting switches, and resetting the old system. Leora stood beside him, holding onto the metal frame for balance. She watched with quiet hope, silver eyes glowing softly. Evan tried to speak calmly. "Just a few more minutes." As he worked, Leora suddenly tensed. Her markings dimmed, then brightened sharply. She pointed toward the canyon entrance, her expression urgent. Evan froze. He heard it too, the faint humming sound of drones approaching, echoing against the stone walls. "Almost there," he whispered. He reconnected the final wire, flipped the main switch, and the panel lit up with weak green light. "Yes." He turned to Leora. "Try now." "Send your signal." Leora stepped forward, placing her hands gently on the metal surface. Her glowing markings spread softly into the panel like tiny streams of light flowing into the machine. A soft tone emerged, a frequency only her species could create. The tower lights flickered, then stabilized. The message had been sent, but the drone humming grew louder. "We need to move," Evan said quickly. Leora nodded, breathing fast but steady. Evan grabbed her hand, and together they slipped behind the tower into a narrow side canyon. The pathway curved, offering natural cover. They crouched behind the rocks as shadows appeared at the canyon entrance. Several drones floated in, scanning the area with cold, blue lights. Leora pressed close to Evan, her fear clear but controlled. Evan wrapped an arm around her shoulders in a steadying gesture. "Stay calm," he whispered. "We're hidden." The drones paused near the tower, swirling in slow circles as if studying the activated system. Their blue lights flashed rapidly. Evan held his breath. Leora squeezed his hand tightly. Minutes passed like hours then. Finally, the drones drifted away, confused or unable to locate the precise source of the signal. Evan exhaled quietly. "We did it," he murmured. Liora looked up at him, relief in her eyes, but also something deeper, a gratitude so strong that it shined brighter than her markings. Evan smiled gently. "Your people will come. We just have to wait." For the first time since he found her, Leora's glow brightened fully, filling the canyon with soft, warm light. She knew he had kept his promise, and Evan knew. This was only the beginning of something far greater than either of them had expected. Evan and Leora stayed hidden behind the tall canyon rocks for a long time after the drones left. The air was cool inside the narrow pathway, and their quiet breaths echoed softly against the stone walls. Leora leaned lightly against Evan, still tired from the long walk and the effort of sending the signal. Yet her eyes held steady strength. She knew her message had reached somewhere far beyond the moon. Evan felt hopeful too, though he remained alert. Danger was not gone yet. After a few minutes, Evan peeked around the rock edge. The canyon entrance was empty. The drones had moved deeper into the forest, confused by the sudden burst of energy from the tower. Evan turned back to Leora. "We should move deeper into the canyon," he said softly. "The drones might come back." Leora nodded. She pushed herself up with slow, careful movements. Evan helped her stand, supporting her gently. Together, they walked along the narrow side path. The stone walls curved around them like a protective shell. The deeper they went, the less likely drones could find them. After a short distance, they reached a small hollow in the rocks, natural shelter formed by two stones leaning together. Evan checked the ground for safety, then guided Leora inside. "We can rest here until night," he said. "It's hidden." Leora sat down slowly, pulling the blanket around her shoulders. Her breathing was still a little uneven from effort, but she looked calmer. Evan sat beside her, adjusting his backpack and checking the scanner again. The signals were weaker now, but still present. The search was not over. Leora gently touched his arm, asking silently if he was all right. Evan gave her a small smile. "I'm okay." "Just thinking." He looked at the canyon wall across from them. "Your people should receive the message soon. But I don't know how long it will take for them to reach this moon." Leora tilted her head, thinking, then placed both hands over her heart and closed her eyes. Her glowing markings brightened slightly. It seemed like she was trying to sense something, maybe the distance of her people, maybe their response. After a moment, her glow dimmed and she opened her eyes again. She touched Evan's hand and nodded slowly, as if to say, "They heard. They are coming." Evan felt relief wash through him, though he knew they still had to stay careful until the rescue arrived. Hours passed quietly. Evan used the time to gather small stones and dry branches to build a tiny heat source without fire. He placed a small energy stone under the branches, creating a gentle warmth strong enough to comfort them without giving away their location. Leora watched him work, then reached out and touched the stone. Her markings responded softly, glowing in harmony with the warmth. She smiled faintly. Evan sat down beside her again. "You're healing fast," he said. "Much faster than a human." Leora looked at her leg, touching the bandage lightly. She gave a small nod, as if agreeing. Then she tapped her chest gently, and then pointed to the forest. It seemed she was trying to explain that the natural energy on this moon helped her heal. "That makes sense," Evan said softly. "This moon has strange healing properties. Maybe your people chose it for the same reason I'm here." Leora tilted her head in thought, her silver eyes brightening a little with understanding. As evening approached, the sky outside the canyon turned orange and purple. Evan stepped out of the hollow for a moment and looked toward the canyon entrance. The light made long shadows stretch across the ground. It was quiet again. Too quiet. Evan checked the scanner. The signals had grown stronger once more, but this time from a different direction. He returned to Leora quickly. "We might have to move after dark," he said. "The drones are looping around the canyon. They're searching everywhere." Leora looked worried but not panicked. She touched Evan's wrist, a gesture that had become her way of saying, "I trust you." Evan placed his other hand gently over hers. "I'll keep you safe. We just need to be careful." The night finally fell. The canyon became darker, but Leora's soft glow gave them just enough light to see. When the air grew cool enough to hide their body heat, Evan prepared to move. He packed their things quietly and made sure the blanket around Leora was secure. "Ready?" he whispered. Lo, stood slowly and nodded. They walked out of the hollow together, staying close to the rocks. The canyon floor was smooth, making their steps quiet. Evan guided her with gentle touches, helping her avoid loose stones that might make noise. The warmth of her glow illuminated the path, but she dimmed it as much as she could so they wouldn't be spotted. As they moved deeper through the canyon curves, they heard distant humming again. Evan froze. Leora stopped too. They pressed themselves close to the stone wall. The humming grew louder drones passing high above the canyon. Their lights flickered over the ridge, casting faint blue trails in the sky. Evan held his breath. Leora placed a hand on the stone wall and closed her eyes, sensing the movement. When the drones faded into the distance, Evan exhaled quietly. They continued their slow walk deeper into safety. After some time, they reached a wide-open area inside the canyon. The stone walls rose high on all sides, forming a natural bowl. Evan recognized this place. "We're close," he whispered. "There's a small ridge where we can climb to see the whole sky. If your people are arriving, we'll see their ships." Leora's eyes brightened with hope. They followed the narrow path upward. The climb was gentle but long. Evan supported Leora the entire time, making sure she didn't strain herself. The glowing markings on her arms brightened and faded with each breath, showing her effort. Yet she didn't give up at the top of the ridge. The sky opened above them, wide, dark, and full of stars. Evan guided Leora to a flat stone where they could sit safely. The cold wind brushed against them, but the blanket kept Leora warm. They waited. Minutes passed. Then an hour. Leora leaned lightly against Evan, her glow soft and calm. Evan looked at the scanner again. The drone signals were moving farther away now, spreading through the forest with less focus. Perhaps the message had confused them enough. Suddenly, Leora lifted her head. Her silver eyes widened. Her markings brightened sharply. Evan turned his gaze upward. A faint streak of light appeared in the sky, small at first, like a star sliding across the darkness. Then another, and another. The streaks grew brighter, forming soft trails of gold and white light. Leora stood slowly, her breath trembling with emotion. She raised her hand toward the sky. The lights came closer, revealing the shape of elegant ships, smooth, glowing like drifting lanterns. They moved silently, gracefully, almost blending with the night sky. Evan felt awe sweep through him. "Your people," he whispered. "They're here." Leora turned to him with tears shining in her silver eyes. Her expression was filled with relief, gratitude, something deeper, something that had grown quietly between them since the moment he found her in the forest. Suddenly, more lights appeared. But these lights were different blue, sharp and mechanical. Evan's heart tightened. "The drones," he whispered. Two sets of signals were closing in one peaceful, in one dangerous. Leora grabbed Evan's hand, fear rising again. Evan squeezed her hand gently. "Don't worry," he said softly. "Your people will protect us." Above them, the two groups of lights drew closer. The night sky was about to change everything. The sky above the canyon glowed brighter by the second. Leora stood close beside Evan, her hand in his, her silver eyes fixed on the lights approaching from opposite directions. Her people's ships glided down like falling stars, calm and beautiful, while the blue lights of the drones rushed in from the forest edge. Two forces were on a collision path, and Evan knew they had only moments before everything unfolded. A soft hum reached them first, gentle, warm, almost musical. It came from the ships belonging to Leora's people. As they descended lower, the air filled with a peaceful vibration that echoed through the canyon walls. Leora raised her free hand toward them, her glow brightening with hope. But the drone humming grew louder, to sharper, colder. Blue lights flashed between the rocks as the machines spread out, scanning for movement. They had tracked the signal and now wanted to find whoever activated it. Evan stepped slightly in front of Leora, protective without thinking. She touched his arm gently, as if telling him she was not afraid, not now that her people had arrived. Evan forced himself to breathe steadily, trusting her calmness. The first alien ship landed on a high ridge above the canyon. Its surface shimmered, as if covered in flowing liquid light. A soft ramp opened from the bottom, revealing tall figures with graceful movements. Their skin glowed faintly like Leora's, and their markings pulsed in slow, calming patterns. Leora stepped forward, her voice soft as she called out in her native language. The sound was musical, peaceful, filled with emotion. The figures on the ridge responded with their own tones. Warm notes that echoed across the rocks like a greeting meant only for her. Evan watched her with quiet wonder. He had grown used to her gentle presence, her calm glow, her careful way of learning his words. Seeing her now among her own kind, she looked stronger, brighter, different, in a beautiful way. Yet she still turned back to look at him, as if he belonged in this moment too. The drones arrived just then, breaking the calm. Blue lights sliced through the shadows, illuminating the canyon floor. Machines moved quickly, spreading out in formation. They were scanning everything, the rocks, the ground, the air. It was only a matter of seconds before they locked onto Evan and Leora. Evan held Leora's hand tighter. "Stay close," he whispered. But Leora was not frightened. She stood tall beside him, her glow rising like soft fire along her arms. She lifted both hands, palms open, and looked toward her people. One of the tall figures stepped forward on the ridge and raised his hands as well. Leora's glow brightened, and the figure's markings brightened in response. A wave of gentle light spread across the canyon. Evan felt it wash over him like warm wind. The drones felt it too. Their blue sensors flickered, then sputtered. The light did not harm them, it only confused them. Their signals became unstable, their movements jerky. One by one, they drifted backward, retreating from the canyon as if unable to process the gentle energy surrounding the place. The peaceful wave continued until all the drones were completely out of range. Their humming faded, swallowed by the forest. Leora lowered her hands, breathing softly. Evan stared at her, amazed.
And you did that?
He asked quietly. She shook her head and pointed toward the ridge. Her people, they had sent the wave. Right. She had connected with them, guiding them toward the right moment. Together, they had created a protective shield without harming anything. Slowly, tall figures descended the ridge, walking gracefully toward the canyon floor.
Here.
Their steps made no sound on the stone. Leora stepped forward to meet them. Followed, unsure if he was allowed but unable to leave her side. When they reached the canyon bottom, the first of the figures approached Leora. He placed a hand gently on her forehead, as if checking her health. His markings glowed warmly. Leora responded with a soft tone, explaining everything in her own way. Her voice was calm but emotional, telling the story of how she had been lost, injured, and found by a human healer. The figure looked at Evan next. His silver eyes studied Evan's face with quiet intensity. Evan stood still, unsure of what to do. The figure stepped closer and placed a gentle hand on Evan's shoulder. The touch was warm, peaceful. Evan did not understand the gesture, but it felt like a greeting. A thank-u.liora moved beside Evan again. She looked up at the tall figure and spoke softly with a tone full of urgency and affection. As she spoke, she pointed at Evan, then at herself, then at the forest, then back at him. Evan realized she was telling them how he had saved her, healed her, protected her, guided her. Her markings glowed with each word, showing her feelings clearly. The tall figure responded with a soft, melodic tone. Leora nodded. Then she turned to Evan, her expression gentle but serious. She stepped closer to him and took both of his hands. Her touch was warm, glowing softly. Evan felt his chest tighten with emotion. "Leora?" he asked softly. She looked into his eyes, her expression full of meaning even though she could not say full sentences in his language. She reached up and touched his cheek lightly, then pressed her forehead to his expression of gratitude, trust, and deep connection. Evan closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the warmth move through him like calm light. When she stepped back, the tall figure beside her spoke a few words in his musical language. Leora turned to Evan, trying to explain. She pointed upward award. Their ships then pointed at him, then made a soft gesture of distance. Evan understood. "You have to go," he said softly. Leora nodded slowly, her eyes shining. She reached out and touched his hand again. Evan held her hand gently. "You'll be safe," he whispered. "That's all that matters." She shook her head gently, as if telling him he mattered too. She leaned against him, just for a moment, resting her forehead on his chest. Evan wrapped his arms around her in a gentle embrace, careful to respect her delicate frame. She glowed brighter, comforted by the closeness. Then she slowly stepped back. Her people guided her toward the ridge, but she turned around again and again, wanting to hold on to the last moments with him. Evan watched her until she reached the ramp of the ship. Before stepping inside, Leora looked back one last time. Her markings glowed in a soft pattern one he had learned to recognize. It meant goodbye, but also promise. He raised his hand in a small wave. "Take care, Leora." The ship lifted slowly, rising into the sky with gentle light. Evan watched, until it became only a bright star, then disappeared among the others. The canyon fell quiet again. Evan stood alone on the ridge for a long time. A warm breeze brushed against him, and he could still feel the soft glow of her touch on his skin. He knew she was safe now, far from danger, with her people who loved her. Yet he also knew something had changed inside him, a quiet connection, a bond he had never expected. He didn't know if he would ever see her again, but deep down, he believed he would, because something that strong did not end with distance. It simply waited.